Well, welcome to the family hour of the Yahowah blog. I'm here with Kirk again this evening. This is our second attempt to uh, do a co-hosted show. I think, Kirk, you're right over there over my left shoulder. We're going to return to our review of something that happened almost 2,888 years ago. We're reviewing the episode between Elia, the most sarcastic of all of Yahweh's prophets, probably the greatest orator among them, a man who no doubt entertained God and annoyed the religious and political. And what he had set up at God's request was a showdown between someone who spoke for him, Elia being the only one on the planet, and the political establishment, Ahab, and his really horrible wife, the resolute pagan, Jezebel, and 850 prophets that, while they represented the Phoenician and Canaanite religion, the religions that were really practiced all through the ancient world, I don't think he could have picked prophets of gods and goddesses any more emblematic of Christianity today than the two that he picked. They are the Lord, represented by Baal, and Asherah, who was the queen of heaven, the mother of God, and the Madonna and child. And so when you talk about a Lord and a Madonna and child, you certainly have Christianity, and that's what is manifest here before our eyes, because this whole episode was to accomplish something that Yahweh finds exceedingly important. He wants to set up an episode in Yisrael's past that is invocative of their future, so that those whose eyes are open, whose minds are receptive, have the opportunity to learn in the past and not replicate the same mistakes. Of course, all of this was lost on Israel. And we can now take what happened in the past and apply it to our future. This is very similar to the story of King Saul. King Saul's story is meaningless apart from what he represents. He was a harbinger of the wannabe apostle Saul, who created the religion of Christianity that did the most harm to Yahweh, his beloved son, our Messiah, Dowd, and to the salvation of God's people. And so, similar to that, we have Elia opposing the religious and political establishment of Yisrael, because this is the very role that he's going to play in our not too distant future, just 8.5 years from now. So we're going to commence, Kirk, where we left off the last time. And we read, "We want to offer 2 fully mature and productive bulls for ourselves, and let them select for themselves a single preferred bull for their test. Cut it in pieces and divide the meat and set it onto the wood planks, but put no fire to it. That I myself will engage to prepare that which is associated with one uniquely productive and mature bull, and I will offer him as a gift, over and above the wooden beams, but I will not set fire to him." Malachim Rulers, 1 Kings 18:23. The reason that the details here are important is that on Towrah, in year 6000 Yah, this will be a Shabbat. It's going to occur to the backdrop of a full solar eclipse, be the first of Abib. And after orchestrating the Towrah harvest of covenant members who become immortal at this moment, that'll occur on a Friday evening, the 23rd of the 7th month. The following morning, it is my responsibility to tell the Ruach Kodesh, the 7 spirits that have been empowering and emboldening and protecting me, and the Malach that Yahweh has assigned to keep all manner of hostile forces at bay, protecting me all these years that I've spoken for him, and I have to tell them all to stand down. And then the corporeal manifestation of Hasatan will be in Jerusalem at the time, as will Elia, and we will summon this force for evil to meet with him on the southern end of the Temple Mount, overlooking the city of Dod. And I will encourage him to take my life, which he will do with great zeal and enthusiasm, bludgeoning me to a bloody pulp. And it is what God's going to do with the sacrifice of my physical body, just as he did with the sacrifice of Dod's physical body 2,000 years before this event, also on a wood beam, that's going to restore his people. Because there will be a mortal remnant of Israel left behind at this moment that will be in Jerusalem, and it is essential that they be prepared for the great homecoming, the family reunion. And because they're, to this moment, they have still refused to say Yahweh's name, to embrace Dod as their Messiah and King, the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, and they've still clung to their religion and to their politics, they aren't prepared to meet with God. They're most certainly not prepared to even be seen in the Messiah's presence. And so Yahweh has arranged a reenactment of all of this to resolve that. There will be a symbolic bull, just as there was a symbolic lamb when Dod fulfilled Pesach. Dod was not turned into a lamb when he fulfilled Pesach. He represented the Pesach El, his body did. I'm going to represent the Parah at this moment, but I'm not going to be a red cow. The term that Yahweh uses to describe the role that I'm going to play is Adamah Parah. Kirk, you've done a glossary. I'm sure you were aware that Adam means man.
Right.
That Adam also means red. And that Adamah is the primary Hebrew word for ground and earth. And so Adamah is, in this case, the bloody red man of the earth. And he is the Adamah Parah, so he is a productive and fruitful man of the earth. It's whose life Satan is going to take, that Yahweh is going to transform into a means to save his people. And in this case, I'm going to find that that my body will be moved to an area that'll be before a replica of the tent of the restoring witness, which is certainly appropriate for the fact that Elia and I will have been there for 3.5 years, providing a restoring witness. And he's going to prepare the same cedar beams that were here on this case. And that rather than in the case of 2,888 years ago, with people bringing copious amounts of water in vessels, Yahweh's going to open up a torrent of water beneath the Temple Mount. And in so doing, he is going to allow that water to roll over the Temple Mount and cleanse his people. But not before he ignites these wood beams so that the fire becomes magnificent and leaps up to the heavens. And the ash is mixed with the water, providing this cleansing recipe that Yahweh speaks of, not only in Numbers 19, which, by the way, precedes the waters of Meribah, the ugliest episode in the entirety of the life of Israel, where they were just disgusting, filthy, and their kind of horrid attitude towards God. And so the waters and the ash and these searing flames cleanse the Israelites so that they're prepared to be in Yahweh's presence while they wash away the filth that has come to torment them. And so you're going to see all of this enormous spectacle with the ultimate orator, somebody who is well practiced in the art of opposing the political and religious establishment. Eliah is going to be the master of ceremony. And during the midst of this, Yahweh's voice will return for the first time in 3,480 years to speak directly to this remnant of Israel. It's going to be an amazing sight. And by going through this story in Malachim, Rulers, 1 Kings 18, we are prepared. We know what we're going to see. This is a dress rehearsal for when it really matters, with the sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, known as the red heifer, although I can assure you no cows will be harmed in this great display. And it's going to take place on Towrah, to the backdrop of a solar eclipse, 10 days before Yahweh's return with Dowd. That is the reason that Eliah stated that he wanted these two bulls for us. Even in Shamain indicates that this will be repeated a second time. Also, Nathan speaks of a gift, reminding us that Yada will willingly give his life so that Yisrael will live. Imagine that, Israel. A goy. Offering his life for you. And really, this is the smallest part of it. I've devoted every waking moment, essentially, of the last 23 years to addressing Yahweh's testimony, rendering it correctly in translations, and then contemplating the intent of God's message for his people and sharing those insights in the 35 books that comprise the Yada Yahowah bookshelf at yadayah.com. So this is all part of what God has done. The person who has contributed the most to reacquainting Yisrael with Yahweh's name, reintroducing them to the covenant, to the Mikra, and to their Messiah, is the one whose life will be sacrificed for them. And in this case, it is the thing that is being sacrificed, which is my Bashar body, which is clever, and that I have served these past years as Dowd's Bashar Herald. So it is a kind of a play on words in this case, but going into the millennial Shabbat and going into our eternity with our Father, the thing that is actually a liability is that which is going to be consumed in the flames, my physical. And the flames themselves, Kirk, are important here, because what is the essence of fire? What does fire do?
Warmth, light.
Oh, well, that's it, but that's not the point here.
Purifies.
Yeah, it does, but that's not the point here. What fire does is it consumes dead organic material, and it transforms dead organic material into radiant energy and light. And radiant energy and light that rises up. And so fire is the ultimate metaphor for what Yahweh is offering us through the covenant. Our physical bodies very soon will be useless to us. Yeah, we'll still be able to take on a human form, but I'm tell you, I'm going to be 6'6", and I'm going to be a really handsome dude. I'm going to be able to drive a ball 375 yards right down the middle of the fairway, maybe with a little right to left. I tell you, we are going to be able to transform our spiritual energy into physical form, reversing Einstein's E = mc², anytime we wish to, but our physical bodies are a tremendous liability.
Sure.
They preclude us from being perfect. They preclude us from being eternal. They preclude us from journeying around the universe. So what this fire does is it shows Yisrael the very thing that Yahweh was offering, and that the remnant, not the remnant, but those who were gleaned on Towrah have already enjoyed this transformation from being a physical body with all of those limitations to being like light. And that's what's going to happen with my physical body. So it's actually a celebration. So once you get over the fact, okay, Dode's example where he was beaten by Rome wasn't much fun, and had to be painful for the experience to be meaningful, as a sacrifice on behalf of his people, something that Dode willingly volunteered to do. Once you get past that, you recognize that this whole performance, orchestrated by God with Elias, the master of ceremonies, is going to be tremendously edifying. And it's going to benefit everyone that's there, even the sacrificial victim, in this case, will benefit, except Hasatan will not. This will singe his final hopes. He has hoped that he will have the Feast of the Beast, where he will devour and cannibalistic style my flesh and drink my blood, and it just isn't going to work out for him. So sorry, Satan, but you have been thwarted. And you might say, well, why would Satan give a hoot about you? Well, because if it were not for me,
Yahweh don't return.
Yeah, let's just say that Yahweh chose me because there was no one else available. No one else willing to listen to him. No one else who had walked away from religion, who was willing to go to his words led. And it's very likely that there was no one else that Yahweh could call. I think I got this job largely by default, although I think I manifest all the characteristics that Yahweh was looking for. But should we not have formed this relationship and this collaboration, there would be no hope for the planet. There would be no Shabbat harvest, no Towrah harvest, no sacrifice of the Adamah Parah, no cleansing of a remnant of Yisrael, no one amongst all of Yisrael that would know Yahweh's name, that would know that it was Dode that is returning, would understand this homecoming, would benefit from Dode's sacrifice by fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, would know the conditions of the covenant, would know how the Moed Mikre fulfill and provide the benefits of the covenant. They wouldn't know the timing of these events either. They wouldn't understand this approach of the time of Jacob's troubles. They wouldn't know any of it.
True.
And without knowing any of it, they couldn't capitalize on any of it. So if that is true, then there is no harvest on Shabbat. There is no ingathering on Towrah. There is no cleansing sacrifice that prepares the adulterous woman in Numbers 5 through the ordeal described in Numbers 19, and Israel remains stained by the waters of Meribah.
Yeah.
And so that being the case, there is no homecoming. There's no reason for Yahweh to return to earth with Dode, because there's no one to greet him. That being the case, the whole human experience was a waste of time. And man was already on the cusp of destroying the planet. So, had that occurred, guess who wins? Guess who wants to take me out? Because if I'm not here proclaiming what Dode has done and touting Yahweh's name, Satan prevails.
Yeah, that's done. It's the only way you can stay alive, Sheol.
So that is the reason for all of this. And listen, I'm not trying to build myself into a significant performance here. I didn't know any of this when we began. Yahweh asked me to do this. I didn't even know his name. And if he had told me that this was going to be the way the story plays out back 23 years ago,
Whoa.
I'd have played a Moses on him, saying, "No, you got the wrong fella." Besides that, I'd mumble, as you know, if you listen to these programs. Sometimes my diction's not very good. So, no, it said, no, I got the wrong guy. See you later. It's been fun, but not too. No, what happened is I started off anonymously. I was having a great time learning, developing, a body of information that was so revealing, discovering insights that hadn't been seen or shared in thousands of years. And there were hundreds and hundreds of them. And then wham, one day when I least expected it, you know what I was doing? I was tracing down Zeroah. I had realized that Zeroah is defined in the Torah as the sacrificial lamb. And so I was just doing fine with it. And then all of a sudden when I'm trying to understand Zeroah, I find Zeroah speaking of a Nakri, of an observant foreigner. He can't be the sacrificial lamb. And then I find Yashayah describing or setting up the whole paradigm of the Pesach El and carrying our guilt, which is a beautiful picture. But it's introduced by saying that the person that's going to explain this to you is a Zeroah. So then you figure out, well, Zeroah also means to cultivate the seeds for a productive harvest. And once you're dealing with that, and now you're dealing with trying to appreciate the actual Sermon on the Mount when Solomon was dedicating the home for Yahweh's name on Mount Moriah. And he's speaking of this Nakar that's going to come, that is going to lead Yisrael back home. You have to be sober about what God's saying. And those were just the first two. There are hundreds upon hundreds of references where God says, this is my guy. He is my voice. He is Dode's herald. He is the messenger. He is the restoring witness. He is the Zeroah. He is the observant foreigner. And on and on it goes. So being ignorant of that, disregarding what God had to say about it, puts his people and his plans at risk. It would be irresponsible. Now, even in that, Kirk, because we're talking about the dress rehearsal for the Adam of Parah, which is called the Red Heifer.
Yes.
Here through Eliyah, even with all of that, with God saying, this is going to be my guy, this is my voice to my people at this time. Imagine the sense of responsibility, the sense of, if I go take a vacation, if I decide that, today I really don't want to work at this, if I decide that, what was it, a month ago almost, when we were trying to figure out how do we resolve this problems that we had with social media and branding and the like, and how do we go forward from here? And Yahweh comes and said, I want you to start completely fresh. I want you to rebrand what you have done under this stylish menorah. And what if you said, if you want to start over in social media, that means I need to go from translating and writing, which we've done for 23 years with great joy together.
Oh, that's fun.
I got 35 books on the shelf, all free for you to read. It's tens of thousands of unheralded insights. Profound.
Truly.
But I said, no, you're going to become a vlogger. Okay, a vlogger is a 20-year-old in mom's basement.
Pretty much.
No, I'm too old for this. No, this is. You think I want to spend my day on X commenting on world events to get people's attention? Do you think that Facebook, which I have never used in my life until 3 weeks ago. And gosh, we've gone from no one to
1,000?
1,200 friends on
1,200?
Facebook. And we have some wonderful covenant members that are working with us, a lot that are no-shows, which is troublesome. But we have many that are with us. On X, there's maybe 10 of the 400 that are plus that are following me that are, we're the most active in the covenant prior to this. This is what Yahweh wanted. He realized that most people no longer want to read.
That's true.
He realizes that he must communicate in writing. So we have the books. And by writing the books, we have the knowledge. But the way people are willing to invite you into their homes and into their lives is to look at a camera and speak directly to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're reading the books to them. We're reading the books for them. We are doing what Yahweh wanted. We're coming into your home. We're making his message available to you in the way you want it brought to you. And so, this is who we are. This is why we're here. And if you're among the fortunate ones, you have anywhere from less than 2 years to less than 9 years left. I may say the fortunate ones. If you are going to join us on the Shabbat harvest, you're less than a year and a half away, May 22nd, 2026, which is the time we begin the time of Israel's troubles. At the end of that time, you have the final harvest of saved souls, of covenant members on Towrah, 10 days before Yahweh's return. And if you survive the onslaught of Muslims and progressives into Israel trying to eradicate God's country and people, then if you're one of those surviving remnant, then you have the opportunity to capitalize on this very event that we're sharing with you, the sacrifice of the Adam of Parah, which is foretold through what Elia had done against religion and politics 2 millennia, 888 years prior. That's the story we're telling.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity, Israel, to capitalize. If you're not a Israelite, Kirk, for example, like yourself,
No.
as a non-Israelite, you don't have that many more opportunities. Shabbat will be the final harvest that will be, that's going to include Goyim and Israelites. And from that time to the end, Yahweh's got a single focus. It's on his people. The Towrah harvest is of olives, and therefore Israelites, and the remaining remnant of Israel is Israelites. I think about the best that's going to happen to a Goyim after the Shabbat harvest is you could be one of the mortals that gets to enter the millennial covenant, but you are millennial celebration of Sukkah, but you're not among those camping out with God. You are there to provide labor, to work. So it's there are not a whole lot of opportunities awaiting Goyim. This is among your last chances. And that is the reason we're really here for Yisrael, because while we'd love to see more Goyim as part of the covenant, and would love to see the Shabbat harvest and it's of mutual kinds of grains. There's 2 loaves of bread. There's every indication that the Shabbat harvest is broad-based, young and old, rich and poor, men and women, Goyim and Yehudim. But from that point on, it has to be on Yisrael, because Yahweh made promises to Yisrael. And he even says in Yirmiyah 31 that he's going to reconcile and reaffirm his covenant with Yehudim in Yisrael. And so it's Yisrael that we have to prepare such that there is a responsive remnant. So that the homecoming and family reunion are great celebrations with Yahweh.
Yes.
Well, as for the par bull, this variation of bovine was selected for a number of reasons. First, Yada as a Adam, a man, and second, this the blood of a par, of a bull, is what anoints the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant on Kippurim.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the other sacrificial animal is that anoints the Kipporeth, the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant on Kippurim?
A lamb.
It is a scapegoat. A
goat. Yes, yes,
goat.
yes.
A goat.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know who is depicted as a goat wearing
Hell
goat
yeah.
hair? Yes, you got it. Yeah, what tells a story.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, he knows how to weave a plot. Now, third, par forms the basis of para, which is an especially fruitful and productive soul, in keeping with the role of the final zeroah, one cultivating the seeds during the Shabua Katsir and the Teruah Lakat. And fourth, with par, we also see the alternative to Yahweh that is advanced by Hasatan, because the bull was the primary symbol of the false god, Baal, the Lord, in pagan mythology, particularly in Babylon, which is where the last Exodus is coming from. So by saying that the sacrificial animal is going to be a bull, and Aaron and the children of Israel pointed their finger right in God's face and mocked him when they made the golden calf as
Sure.
Moshe was up receiving the Torah. This bull is slain. This rebellion of God's people is slain. And so just as Dod's soul was slathered with the guilt of every covenant member and taken into Sheol, I'm going to represent the part of me that is killed is going to represent what's wrong with Israel, such that it is incinerated and disposed of, making Israel appear more perfect. So even as these days play out, one last time, Yahweh's gift, featured as the Adamah Parah, will be countered by the Lord of Bull, you know what. So even here, by using Kara to summon and invite, to read and recite, to call out and welcome, we are reminded that this will all play out on Yahweh's terms and schedule, with Kara, in this case, serving as the basis of Mikra, the invitations to be called out and meet with God. It reads, "You call upon the name Wa Kara Bashem of your gods, and I will invite calling upon the name of Yahweh. Then let it be that the God who answers responding with fire, he is God." And all the people replied, "Yeah, this resolution is appropriately stated." Malachim, 1 Kings 8:24. Powerful insights. What do Jews refer to, since they won't say his name, they won't say Yahweh? How do they refer to God?
Adonai, Lord, Baal. Still
Nope.
Baal.
No. Hashem.
Oh, Hashem.
Hashem is the primary reference to
The name.
God amongst
That's
Jews.
worse.
It is Hashem. What do we have here? Shem, 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 Shem. The pagan gods, you call on their Shem. And what did Eliah do? He said, "I call on Yahweh."
Yeah.
So what is the difference between Eliah and the rabbinic community in Israel?
He knows his name.
Yeah, the advocates of Baal and Asherah, and the political and religious leaders of the day, they had their Shem. And Eliah, he called upon the name of Yahweh. It is the first step towards God, knowing and using his name. And of course, Kara, one of the greatest terms in all of Hebrew. It is a verb that means to invite, to welcome, to read and recite, to call out, to proclaim, to welcome and to greet. it is as important a word as there is in the Hebrew language. And Karabashem Yahowah tells us that if we are being invited to be welcomed with the name of Yahweh, then let it be that the God who answers responding with fire, he is God. When Yahweh revealed himself to Moshe, how did he come across? What was the metaphor he used? That's fire. Yahweh presented himself as fire before Moshe. When Yahweh is trying to cleanse his people one last time so they're prepared for his arrival, what is he going to ignite?
He's going to ignite the sacrifice with the water.
He's going to ignite the fire.
Yeah.
He's going to greet his people with a magnificent blaze. Yahweh responds with fire because fire takes corrupt, old, dead, rotting, in many cases, organic material and transforms it into radiant energy and light. This is Yahweh's answer for what's wrong with his people.
Good.
But beyond all of that, Yahweh Anna. You know, when Yahweh introduced the 7 Moed Mikre to us, and he provided these invitations, what God said throughout them is that we should Anna, answer and respond to the invitations that Yahweh is offering through Pesach, Matzah, Bakodim, Shabbat, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah. But relationships have to have a degree of mutuality. And so just as Yahweh is encouraging us to respond to him, he is responsive to us. Now, what's even more amazing, when Yahweh speaks during the Moed Mikre, and he encourages us to answer his invitation, he says, I want you to draw near and come into the presence of the maternal manifestation of light. So Yahweh is reminding us that during the Mikre, we are invited to approach his light, just as here he is responding with fire. The other thing that is quite interesting to me is that over the last 1950 years or so, there have been probably 10 billion Christians. There's 2.5 billion on the planet today. And they're constantly ascribing all manner of things to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And yet Jesus hadn't done shit or shinola. Nothing. I mean, Jesus can't even get off the death stick. You know, he's a dead God on a stick. He hadn't done anything. He hasn't spoken. He hasn't solved a problem. He hadn't done anything. Well, it's not criticizing him, really, because he's nothing but a counterfeit and a myth anyway. But nonetheless, false gods can't do anything. I'm constantly mocking Muslims because throughout the whole story of the Quran and in the Hadith, Allah never did a thing. Allah brags about being a terrorist, but when Allah is a terrorist, it's actually his slaves that carry out his bidding and do terrorist things. He claims that, he terrorized entire communities, but none of those communities ever existed. He claims that he did all the things that Yahweh did, but of course he just plagiarized them from the rabbinical Talmud. He didn't so much as roll over. And he is a rock. I mean, you'd think he could do something like that. Yeah. But there isn't a single thing that Allah does, and he takes credit for everything. And all the way to this point, every time a Muslim's in a pickle, he says, oh, Allah willing. Sure. Allah's not done anything. He's not said anything, done anything. I always tell him, I said, listen, I understand you hate me because I'm telling you the truth about your non-prophet and ungod. And the truth, as it is presented in the Quran and Hadith, is very unflattering of your these characters.
Yeah.
And because, well, fact is that Allah presents himself as a terrorist, and he spends all of his time in hell
Yeah.
torturing all that won't capitulate to him. He's really a nasty
Yeah,
spirit.
good.
And Muhammad was amongst the worst people who ever lived. He was a pedophile and a rapist and a bloodthirsty terrorist, and he was sadistic. He was a mass murderer. He was just a really rotten fellow. And so as I expose all of this using the Islamic scriptures, the oldest Islamic sources, it gets Muslims really mad. They don't have a retort because you can't challenge anything I've said without negating their own scriptures, because all I say are based upon their scriptures. So that puts them in a really tough spot, and they don't like that very much. So their retort is, "I kill you." And I said, "Well, I've got your proposition for you. You claim Allah Akbar. Allah is really, really great, and Allah can do all of these things. You just send Allah after me. Surely he knows where I am. I'll give you my address, just in case Allah's taking a nap or needs bifocals. He's a little old these days. You send Allah after me, and we'll go mano a all serpento, and we'll have a showdown. We're actually going to have a showdown. It's going to be on the Temple Mount, so I know how this story ends. Why don't you send Allah after me if he's so great? Rather than you proving that your religion is so vicious that the only way you can respond to somebody who cites your religion to prove that your religion is vicious is to be vicious and kill them. The point is that Elia was making is that false gods can't do nothing. They're worthless. Men have to speak for them. Now you might say, well, yeah, Yahweh was speaking through you. What's the difference? Yahweh spoke directly with his people. Did. And then what did his people do? Say, go away and shut up. We never want to see you or hear from you again. So what did you get? Yeah, you got me. Good choice, huh? I wouldn't be here if you didn't tell God to go away and shut up.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm here. Otherwise, you'd be listening to him. And it's not until he takes me out that he's going to speak to you directly again when my body is sacrificed as the Adam of Torah. So this is the story. And it's all being set up through these words. And it's important for you to know. And all the people replied, this statement resolution is appropriately stated, except for the fact when it happened, nada. They didn't change one iota.
Amazing.
What's wrong with them? Why can't they figure this out? It shouldn't be that hard. Why? God saved them from Mitzrayim, provided all those magnificent miracles, liberated them from the most powerful entity on earth at the time with an 80-year-old stuttering shepherd. And every time they had an issue, he resolved it for them. And he handed them the most valuable document in the universe, the Torah. And so after liberating them, promising to take them to the promised land, and giving them divine instruction, they turned on him. They were miserable. And so the same thing is true here. They said, oh, yeah, that's a great deal. We love that resolution. Okay, you can count on us. We'll be there. 15 minutes later, they were back being rotten again, which is why Yahweh couldn't forget about them, because he made promises to them, but it made it impossible for God to interact directly with them. So this is ultimately the referendum that the Yahweh branded books and Yada Yahowah, that series, seeks to arbitrate, and that Yada and Elia will resolve forevermore. We're inviting you to call upon the name of Yahweh, while the religious would have you submit to a nameless Hashem or a Lord. Truth is on our side, even if our side is outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Every benefit is also on our side. Now, it should be obvious, but if not, Eliah's focus was on the 2 Parim bulls, and it had very little to do with what occurred nearly 3 millennia ago, and everything to do with what will transpire with the sacrifice of the red heifer in less than a decade from this writing. So we read, Eliah said to the prophets, to those claiming to speak for their gods, of the Lord. I guess Asherah was a little bashful at this time, because although we know that there were 450 wannabes speaking for Baal the Lord, and 400 wannabes speaking on behalf of the Queen of Heaven and the Mother of God, Asherah, the model for which the Christian Mary was conceived. There, in case you're wondering, there was no Mary. Mary actually means contentious. Gabriel's not an angel. Didn't come and speak to her and say you're blessed and all this kind of BS. Gabriel actually means most competent and courageous man of God. Oh, yeah. Gabriel is Dode. So the whole story is just an absolute mess, plus the fact Dode was born to an unknown mother 3,000 years ago, but when he came back to fulfill Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, he arrived 3.5 years before the fulfillment, and there was no mommy and daddy involved.
That actually makes great sense. I mean, it solved another one.
Yes, the whole picture fits together perfectly. Dode ended his first life 3.5 years before the cornerstone of Yahweh's home was laid. He returned exactly 1,000 years later from the end of his first life to the beginning of his second life, 3.5 years before he fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, and 3.5 years before his final return, 2,000 years after fulfilling Pesach, Matzah, and Bakodim, he will be heralded by Eliah and Yada. 3.5 years is also the half of 7, which is Yahweh's
favorite number.
And 2 exists, 2 halves, because choice requires at least 2. So then Eliah said to the prophets, so you were going to say something, Kirk? I'm sorry.
No, I was just, these little nuggets you throw out, I may have read them and been with you a long time, so most of them, even if I can't recall them, I know
most of these, the insights that we talk about on these programs, well, I'm reading my translations. Every translation here, every translation that we share here, I wrote.
Yes.
I have invested 10 to 14 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week for 23 years.
Yes.
Composing these translations and the insights that can be derived from them. So I'm reading my own translations, and in many cases, I've written some commentary to share insights that can be derived from them. But when we move to this mode here, where we're moving beyond the, I don't even want to say beyond the written word, because Yahweh's preference is overwhelming for the written word. Yeah. For all the reasons that you found out in your glossary, which is that when you study the words, you come to understand so much more than when you just hear them. And when you hear them, you have no time to study the words. You're just processing the flow of information as opposed to analyzing the details that comprise the big picture.
Right.
But when we move into this oral mode, that you're talking to your audience. You're wanting to connect with your audience in such a way that they come to understand what it is that you've learned about God, so that they can participate in this family. And as you do, and you read these words, you're re-inspired in terms of insight. So Probably a third of the insights that we share in these programs, we're sharing for the first time.
Yeah.
We're going way beyond even the text of these books, and this particular passages that we're reading here regarding Elia are actually presented twice in among the 35 books, but the last time that they are reviewed is in volume 5, which is a completely rewritten book. It went from a little thin guy to fairly thick. I think I have it here over my shoulder. Here it is. Yes. Excuse the back of my head. I apologize. I don't have a camera on the other side, but this is Qatzar Harvest. And yeah, this entire book is based upon the 2 harvests. Well, there actually are 3, but the first of the 3 harvests, Bakudim, was Dod's responsibility. Dod fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakudim, and his fulfillment are in the previous book to this, volume 4, called Mikra, Invitations. Then we have the 2 harvests, Shabbat and Towrah. This entire book is over 800 pages, is just devoted to these 2 upcoming harvests. So there is a lot to read, a lot more than we can cover orally in these programs. But this should be a good teaser to encourage people to say, you know, I think I want to read this book. And they're free online. We're not trying to sell you anything. They're free and they're entirely online. You can read them on any device. Our webmaster has done a marvelous job of making certain, David has, that no matter what device you have, whether it's a tablet or an iPhone or a laptop or a computer or your TV, you can read them because they'll format to the device that you're using.
May I suggest one other thing? As for years, as I would listen to you, and I would have my notes on what area we're doing, covering, and I would write little notes out to the side. I mean, I have thousands of these little things, and then I would recompose it where I want to, in different things, so I get the whole story right. I would, if I was listening to this thing and I was giving anybody advice, obviously I am, but I mean, if I was alone somewhere listening to this, I would sit down and get out a notepad and take some of these notes down, because you'll say things that are just, I mean, they're gems. I'm not trying to brag on you. They just really are. It's just, and I would write these down and say, that is brilliant. Well, because it helps your witness. It helps my witness to be able to say, oh, and another thing, this, and the other. It rings so much truer or so much more in depth that way. So, be a note taker like college did.
But it would have to be that way. Now, when we read in Yeshayahu 11, which was one of those first encounters with, oh my, who is Yahweh talking about? Who is this choder, this stem from the main branch? Who is this sucker that grows from the original rootstock to give the tree life, that is writing this nesh sign that Yahweh is lifting up, but more importantly, was so vital to God's plans, and maybe so inept apart from God, that he received something no one else in all of human history has received: 7 spirits of Yahweh. So that he would have insight, so that he would be bold in the sharing of them, and passionate in speaking to God's people. If you're going to be given the 7 spirits of Yah, and you're going to devote 10 to 14 hours a day to this for 23 years, there better be a lot of insights, or something got cross-wired here, you know. So this is the purpose. I don't want to mislead anyone, in the sense that a lot of people expect the Spirit to just reveal things to them without effort. That does not happen. It just does not happen. Yahweh said that Dod was his Ebed, his co-worker. Moshe was his Ebed, co-worker. The role I'm playing is as an Ebed, co-worker.
Yes.
What?
Work.
Worker, right? Worker. It takes effort. Yahweh wants us to engage and work with him. Adam was, first thing he was told, we're going to work the garden. We're going to work together. And so he wants us to work at it. And how do we work at deriving insights? By investigating every word he had to say. Turn them over, examine them under an etymological microscope.
Yeah.
That's why the translations are amplified. And when you work at it and you focus on his testimony and you use the oldest extant manuscripts to correct the Masoretic text, you go beyond the diacritical marks so that you're not confused by them, and you look at the original letters, you can accurately present what Yahweh revealed. And when you do that, oh my goodness, the floodgates of enlightenment and understanding are opened. And that's why there have been tens of thousands of profoundly important, unique insights revealed through these books and this show that have never been considered previously.
True.
And you're aware of the most important of them. I think it's the greatest discovery in human history that was unknown to anyone before we announced it a few years ago.
Dode. I assume you're talking about Dode.
Dode is not only the Messiah and Son of God, the one that
a long list
by Akiba and Paul sought to counterfeit to create their religions. The Dode is the Messiah and the Son of God, the returning King. But far more important than that, Dode volunteered to fulfill Pesach, to open the doorway to life and to God's home. He volunteered to fulfill matzah on yeasting our souls of the fungus of politics and religion so that we would appear perfect before God, taking our guilt with him into Sheol and depositing it there on matzah, such that on Bokorim, the first of the 3 harvests, he became the firstborn son on firstborn children, signing our adoption papers so that God could bring us into his family and enrich us and empower us. This is the single greatest discovery of all time because it has the greatest possible benefit to those who know of it. It is the means to know Yahweh. It is the means to be part of his family. It is the way to enter his home. It is the means also to discredit the religious lies that have led so many astray. That said, we went quite on a tangent there, but I think it's important for people to know who we are, who they are, why you, why me, why we are together, what the Yahweh blog is devoted to accomplishing. Then Elia said, what does Elia mean? Kirk, you've studied all these words.
God is God. I'm sorry, God is Yah.
Yeah, God is Yah, or Yah is God.
Or Yah is God.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Then Elia said to the prophets, those who were claiming to speak for their gods, of the Lord, Baal. By the way, the book that Christians lug around and they say, this is the inerrant word of God, even though the front of the book and the back of the book are in complete and total conflict, which would make it errant if that was the case. What do they call that book?
The Holy Babel.
A Bible. Yeah, Bible. And what is the closest Hebrew word, in fact, a word in Hebrew that's actually spelled identically with Bible?
Baal, Babel.
Babel. Yeah, Babel. Babel and Bible are would be Babel is the Hebrew spelling for a Bible, and Babel represents what?
Satan.
Babylon, right?
Yeah, Babylon.
Yeah, but it is from Yeshaya 14 tells us that it is from Babel that Hasatan is going to rise to fool people into worshiping him as a god. That's true. Babel is Babylon, which is the place that Yahweh is calling his people out in this final Exodus.
Mhm.
But Babel is based on a Hebrew verb, and the Hebrew verb means to confound and confuse
Confused.
by intermixing and commingling truth and lies, which is the nature of Judaism and Christianity, and to some extent even Islam. They are a commingling of lies and truth, very little truth, lots of lies, to create something that appears plausible. That is what Babel is. And in Hebrew, ba means with. And we look at Baal here, Baal. So Baal would be with Baal, the Lord, who is the false god in this story. So Bible would mean with the Lord, which is a false god, or confused and confounded through this intermixing and commingling of truth and lies, the Torah and prophets being true, the New Testament being false.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a very good name to call your book, which is why Yahowah never uses the term.
Yeah.
And by the way, Chole, I'm sure in your glossary you came across Chole, and Chole is a very, very negative term. The closest thing to holy, it's reprehensible.
Yeah.
So choose for yourself a single preferred bull. You get your first choice of bulls. I guess I'm just the seconds here, and the unattractive bull is the one that's going to be sacrificed here not too long. Well, I guess if you were comparing me to Elia, I'd be in his shadow, so I guess that makes sense there too. Elia is just such a great orator. Choose for yourselves a single preferred bull for your test. You get to pick your bull. Prepare it first because, well, you are the more numerous. There's lots of you. Then call out and summon, making a proclamation in the names of your gods, but do not set it on fire. So Elia's got the whole thing down. You have lots and lots of gods. The Lord is your primary God, but he's got lots of little helper gods out there. And you're outnumbering me. In this case, it was 850 to 1, plus the political establishment. It was probably a few thousand to 1, plus most Israel was siding with him. It was probably closer to 1,000,000 to 1. And today it may be closer to 8. Well, when I started, it was 7 billion to 1. It's probably now just shy of 8 billion to a few thousand. So he said, you're by far the most numerous. This has always been the case. When I was very active exposing Islam, they say, it's the fastest growing religion, and there's no chance you as an individual could be right. And the very fact there's so many of us means that we're right. I said, never in human history has the majority been right. Never.
That's true.
And I can go through all of human history in terms of their religion and their politics, and never has the majority been right. So the very fact that you're claiming to be the majority,
bad argument.
Yeah, bad argument. So he says, you're the more numerous. It's always been the case. And it's one of the things that just trips up the religious all the time, because they think that because there's many of them and they get people to capitulate to them, that they must be right.
40 million Frenchmen can't be wrong kind of attitude.
Nope. So call and summon. You can kara, make your own proclamation in the Shem of your Elohim. Now, there's another thing in Judaism where they have a conniption fist, because I will actually write out God, where they said, oh, you can't do that. You can't have the name of a false god on your lips. Well, the real God and his prophet use the Hebrew word for God and gods, speaking of false gods all the time.
Yeah.
You think God's confused and telling you to do something, and he tells his prophets to do the opposite, or is it you that are wrong? And oh, by the way, what is the name of one of the tribes of Israel? Gad.
Oh, Gad, yeah.
Pronounced Gad, but it's written the same way that you would write God. Yeah, written exactly the same way. People who are religious get confused very, very easily. And the reason that this is don't set it on fire, that was the test.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yahweh is light. He can ignite this no matter how difficult the test becomes. And it was a perfect test because the Canaanite and Phoenician gods that had been brought into Israel, particularly Baal, the Lord, he was the sun. And he also carried lightning bolts. And so this was right up his bailiwick. I mean, the god that carries a lightning bolt could sure as heck start a fire, right?
Fire, you think?
I mean, we're going to go to high noon, and when the sun is at its zenith, sure as heck, that big ball of fire can start a fire, right?
Hey.
Well, not so much. So he was playing right into their
Egos.
weak spot. Yeah, their egos. Yeah, perfect term. So one of the great myths of religion is that because it is popular, it must be true. We shared that. Even better than the less pervasive options, and just no time in human history where that has been the case. I mean, they have witnessed one pagan god after another, and in so much of the world, the only religion that is allowed is Islam, and you couldn't have a dumber religion than what Allah and Muhammad brought. It's
awful.
And I mean, I wrote 4,200 pages using their scriptures to prove just how awful it is. And I've written another 5 volumes to disprove everything that you read in the Christian New Testament. I mean, no matter what is said in the Christian New Testament, I just tear it to shreds using evidence and reason and comparing what they claimed versus what God actually said. So it's just never been true, and it isn't true today. Nevertheless, the faithful can never seem to process this undeniable reality. Also, there is no appreciable difference between a monotheistic religion with one God, a pagan belief system with scores of them, or the humanist appeal where man replaces God.
Yes. Yeah.
They're equally wrong.
Yes.
There's this myth that a monotheistic religion is better than a pagan religion. No, it's not. What's the difference having one false god or many false gods?
Yeah, one Satan,
or having no God at all and just pretending that all of this just magically materialized and means nothing. No, there is just no justification for the popular myths that underscore atheism and monotheism, that they are somehow superior to paganism. No, they're not. No, actually, you look at the pagan gods of the Greeks and Romans and the Carthaginians and the like. I mean, they're pretty stylish. They had, I love architecture. Their temples were, the Parthenon and all of these ancient temples are architecturally gorgeous.
Yeah.
So it's just utter nonsense. So in addition, appeals and prayers to gods are a waste of time. Appeals and prayers to the God is a waste of time, and it's most certainly a waste of time to false gods. Now, this is true of every religion and deity. The only actual God actually tells us to listen to him, which is why he never asks us to pray to him.
Yeah.
I mean, you've done a whole glossary of every verb and noun and proper name in the Hebrew lexicon.
Yeah.
And, gone through all of the conjugations and stems and moods and all of that sort of thing in the process. Do you ever find a passage where God says, I want you to bow down and pray to me?
Not one.
No. And having done all that, you've gotten to know the language pretty well. How would you compare your understanding and intelligence to Yahweh's?
Well, I can understand what he's telling me, but he's brilliant. I'm not.
Okay, but, that's my view. God's really smart. That's why when people tell me to simplify this, come up with a summary version, dumb it down for us. And I said, you want me to do what?
There they are.
I've spent 23 years, trying to glean a tiny percentage of what he had to say, and you want me to take my 1% knowledge and
Well, the
dumb it
question
down
becomes,
some more?
the question is, why would you want that?
Why
I mean,
would you want that? Just
he
because
has
you're
all
lazy, you
this,
don't want to invest the time?
he says all this for us. I
Yeah.
mean, it's wonderful. I mean, you know what happened the first time I read Yada Yahowah? I read it all the way through. It took a while. And because everything I stopped and had, oh, wow, let me take a note. And then when I got to the end, I cried because you didn't have another book at the time. I mean, and I was going, well, gee, dummy, why don't you read it again? So I said, well, okay, that's good advice for myself. So I started reading again, and I found, oh, wow, I missed that, I missed that, I missed that, I missed that. You know, and I kept going through, and then it just went on like that. And then so
repetition, it's so helpful, and when we're dealing with Yahweh's testimony, because we just glean a tiny bit the first time through, and more and more and more the more times we go through it. And it's one of the reasons we have written all of these books, rewritten them 5, 6, 7, 8, some 10, 12 times, is because along the way we keep investing in these words that Yahweh shared with us and making connections to other things we've translated and learned. And over time, you learn much more than you knew previously.
Mm-hmm.
And so, imagine coming to realize that David volunteered to serve as the Pesach El and to take our guilt into Sheol on Matzah, and that he is the reason that Bokurim is named firstborn children, because he was the Bokor of Yahweh. And you come upon that, and you've got all these books that didn't acknowledge it. What's the first thing you want to do?
Get rid of them. Change it.
Rewrite them. Change them so that they're correct.
Yeah.
And so, everything that has happened along the way has caused us to go back and to update what we have. Yes, it's work. Very gratifying.
Let me tell one little quick story about you. We were doing some radio programs early. You were kind enough to invite me on, and I kept calling back. And then as the years went by, you decided, okay, this is great. I'm going to call myself Yada, and I want to y'all refer me to it as Yada, because I want to be unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be over here, and I'm going to.
I want to be anonymous.
I'm going to be anonymous. I'm just the voice, and I'm just writing all this stuff. And well, you ain't anonymous.
Not anonymous anymore.
No.
I think it was healthy, though.
Yeah, I know.
To assume that you could be anonymous, because I never viewed myself as part of the story. I was simply one telling the story.
No, I get it.
And even in the part that I have, it's still telling the story. There's only a few things along the way where I'm actually in the story. For the most part, I am telling the story. I'm reintroducing God's people in the world to who the cast of characters are and how this play plays out over the last 6,000 years. So you're telling the story. It just so happens that, there was a lot at stake, and Yahweh wanted to accomplish a great deal, and he wanted his people to trust.
Yeah.
The voice that was speaking to him, and that's why he said so much about it. It isn't for my benefit, because it would have been easier to be anonymous. It's for your benefit.
On this side of the table, there's two things that come to mind. Is number one, if you hadn't have said that, and I hadn't listened to started reading Yada Yahowah, then my soul goes away, or worse. Because I was kind of religious. I had walked away from religion long before I got to Yada Yahowah.
Yeah, so your soul would never have.
It would just dissipate.
It would just dissipated.
But the other thing is when. Well, now I've lost my train of thought there. Forgive me.
But the fact is that if we hadn't worked at this, if Yahweh hadn't.
The other thing was how important you were, other than personally to me, and so many others. The other thing was you, when we get to this end time, this end stuff that we're doing now. My gosh, how important is this whole mission?
Oh yeah, that it's so
more people are going to.
Yeah, now you understand why it was so important for Yahweh to acknowledge this. But the difference in the role that we're playing now versus the role that his prophets played previously is that there was lots of time, and there were quite a number of them, and they could put things in writing that Yahweh inspired them to see,
Evidence.
such that when they happened as they proclaimed them, we would have absolute proof that Yahweh exists and that he inspired this text.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we began 23 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And 23 years is not enough time, prophetically speaking, and I didn't know enough initially either, but it's not enough time to document the future, and then have that future prove to be accurate as it's fulfilled. And by the time that the future is fulfilled on the things that you were speaking about, it's too late for anybody to benefit from it. So prophecy doesn't work in this particular role.
No, witnessing does.
No, and plus the things that Yahweh wants his people to know that you would think a prophet would then be inspired to see, he's already told us about.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be prophecy at all, it would be reporting.
Yeah.
And so there was absolutely no point to having another prophet. And that's why all of the terms describing what I'm doing speak of being a voice, a herald, a witness, a messenger, and an observant foreigner, a choder, which is an implement and a branch off the main branch, the shadak that is shamak that is dode. All of these references are practical, matter-of-fact kinds of things that help people understand the nature of this message and the role. And it's not prophetic. It is reporting on what the prophets revealed, which is also Yahweh's way of, Israel, you have been hard-headed. I gave you everything you needed to know, and you didn't look.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, he did as I asked. He looked at what I shared with my prophets, and he went where those words leads, and therefore he came to understand what you have missed over these 3,000 years. So it is Yahweh's way of saying, it was always there for you. You just didn't bother to look. You wouldn't listen to me. You were too busy praying, bobbing one's head against a wall. Well, there's nothing more irritating to Yahweh. Stop it already. Yahweh isn't listening, and the religious gods are a figment of man's imaginations. This disgusting Islamic butt up, moon the god, nose in the dirt, humiliating prostration where you recite a bunch of puffery. It's just revolting. Paul's prayer without ceasing is nonsense. Listen to what Yahweh has to say. He's much smarter than you are. You do not need to babble to him. Now, I will tell you that there are times where I'll go to God and I'll say, I'm struggling with this. What is the answer here? And I even feel embarrassed doing that, because if God wanted me to know the answer, he'd just tell me the answer. I mean, he's not trying to preclude a lack of knowledge, but sometimes we get stuck.
Yeah.
And every time I've gotten stuck, I was in a voice that sounds a lot like Elia response. When I say a lot like Elia, no matter the question that I have, he has a bit of a sarcastic way of answering. Yeah. It's like I said, I don't want to have to go and rewrite Prophet of Doom when 10/7 happened. That was, 3 or 4 years of living in hell, because Muhammad's life and the Quran are so revolting. It's so disgusting and murderous, and so much sexual perversion and torture and genocide. And I said, God, I don't want to go do that. Been there, done that. Let's move on. And so I tried that with Yahweh. I really don't want to do that. He says, I took care of you.
Yeah.
Now you take care of my people.
Yeah. Well, don't argue with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. next year of my life, and Prophet of
Hey,
Doom that was 1 volume became 5 volumes and
everything just
4,200
exponential.
pages. But when I was in the middle of it, I said, "Oh God, thank you for telling me to rewrite this book,"
Yeah.
because there was so much that I didn't see, and that I didn't have things wrong about Islam. I had things wrong about my understanding of who God is and what He's actually offering, and who was speaking for Him and who was not, and so I got a chance to update the book with all we have learned over these years. The book, the 5 volumes, and it was a valued opportunity, and I feel like I've done so much to help His people through having done that. So it is work, but it is the ultimate labor of love, and that's what we're bringing to you. And Kirk, the next line is, "They huffed and they puffed, but nothing happened." We're going to return to the story of Elia and the religious and political establishment.
Yes.
This time next week, I'm actually now able to look over to my right where I have a Facebook page up. We're live streaming not only to Facebook, but
really?
also on YouTube. And one of these days, we'll also live stream to X. So I'm able to see that. Yep, you are there. I can see your handsome and smiling face, and it is, as I told you from the first one that we did jointly like this. It was by far the most liberating and fun. It's so much more fun to be talking with a friend about these things, to be able to play off of one another, and I get to wear the headset again, which is actually more comfortable for me because I've done 20 years of radio. So I get to wear the headset, which is more comfortable than just talking into to a mic. You're on the other end, and I get to hear you and even see you if I look over to my side and look at my computer here. So it is a much more enjoyable format. I think
it is for me.
Yeah, I think it's also more helpful and enjoyable for our audience. So we'll do more of it. I said earlier today, I'm trying to talk Leah into being a co-host on some of these other shows. And, Leah has the advantage. She has a really good voice for this sort of thing. And, Leah's beautiful. So she's going to really fill up that screen. So I'm hoping, but as they say, Leah is a bit of an introvert. And so it's going to take a little bit, but she loves Yahweh.
Sure.
She loves her people, Yisrael. And so I know that her love for Yahweh and her love for her people is going to be the deciding vote, so that she joins us on camera and we do some of these things together.
I appreciate it.
My pleasure. And we'll look forward to being together this time next week. Family Hour has come to a conclusion. This has been the Yahowah blog, and we are your hosts, Craig Wynn and Kirk Miller. Good night.
Good night.